Welcome to Be Ablaze. We're lighting a fire in you to move you from ordinary to extraordinary, living out your blaze for life. I am your host, Polly Hamp. Let's be ablaze. Hello and welcome to Be a Blaze podcast. I am your host, Polly Hamp, and today I'm so excited to have Dr. Ben Edwards with us with Veritas. We are going to have a really fun conversation. And before I introduce you to him, I want to read you a little bit about who he is and what he does because he has a profound story. I got to get to know you, Ben. We've known you before. We've been on your podcast, both Bob and I, but also we were all at a conference together just a few weeks, gosh, a little over a month ago now. It's crazy, in Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi. And I'm going to read your bio real quick to just talk about who you are, just education wise, but you are so much more than just your education, Dr. Ben. You have an incredible heart for people, and I cannot wait for everybody to know your story. Dr. Ben is a Baylor undergrad, UT Houston Medical School, and McLennan County Medical Education and Research Foundation in Waco for a family practice residency, where he was chief resident, and then the only physician in the county out in West Texas town, a Post. Bob and I have eaten in Post before. It is definitely a small speck in West Texas, and it's just south of Lubbock. He was there for 7 years until he learned deeper truth about how to really help people get well. And then he opened up Veritas Medical, and he's been doing that for 13 years. So, welcome, Dr. Ben. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Polly, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for all you do. And yeah, I really enjoyed getting to know you and Bob even more at the conference. So thanks for having me today.
I'm excited and thank you. And I'm excited for our audience to just hear you have such a gigantic library of information, and is what do we choose from and what I want you to really talk about. But today I really want to ask some questions just about the epigenetics and how our thoughts impact the physical cells and cellular functions, how we are not a victim of our genes. But before you dive into that, I would love for you just to give a snapshot of a backstory, because you are, sadly, when we say conventional health, you're not conventional. And I hope we are moving more towards where you are, your thought process and the way that you approach health now. That is really becoming the norm. And but I would love for you to just give us a high view of your story of how you got to open up Veritas Medical.
You bet. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short because it can be a long story, but I'll hit the highlights. And basically, I like people just to understand that I knew nothing out that wasn't conventional. I did not grow up in a holistic, herbal, chiropractic, whatever, however you look at the word holistic health. I didn't know anything about any of that. I grew up in a little town where both my granddads were MDs, medical doctors. They were general practitioners that did everything, delivered babies, did surgeries, took care of the whole family, cradle to grave, did house calls, all that kind of stuff. My great great granddad was an MD. Two of my uncles are MDs. That's all I knew. And as far as being a doctor, I knew my two granddads. They were just great men in the community. They're leaders in the community on the school board and different civic organizations. And of course, as the doctors took care of the whole town. And so I just knew, man, these guys help people. And I wanted to be in a small town myself and raise my family in a small town. So those two things together, help people. And I had those guys as my model. So I went to school with that in mind. I'm going to learn all there is to know to go out to a small, tiny West Texas town and help people. So I did that. Most of my education at UT Houston, you mentioned MD Anderson, is known as one of the greatest conventional cancer hospitals in the world. And the entire Texas Medical Center down there in Houston is world renowned. So it's a great place to go learn conventional, regular, standard of care medicine. So I walked across that stage, got my diploma, got my white coat, got my MD behind my name. I'm a doctor. Let's go out into the world and help people. And so I was naive. I did not. Now, I thought I learned all there was to know to go help people.
Yeah.
So when I was out in the real world, and I would have some very genuine and sweet little old lady come to my office and bring some newsletter from a chiropractor, some natural healer about some supplement or herb or iodine or whatever, and asked me what I thought. I was polite, but basically the message was, don't waste your time on all that stuff. But my thought was, if that were true, if all these different natural remedies were true and could really be helpful, then they would have taught me that in school. That's what I
Right.
thought. That's what every doctor thinks, I believe. I can speak for myself for sure, but knowing my friends in med school and colleagues, that's where we're coming from. If certain things are true, then the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, all these institutional authorities would be telling us. So right now, after post-COVID, most of the world understands that's not true anymore. But back then, I didn't know that. So anyways, I'm going in naive. I'm doing my thing, practicing conventional medicine in Garza County Health Clinic in Post, Texas, like you said. And I'm just head down, work. And they challenged me to financially turn that clinic around because it'd been losing money for so many years. And I knew how to do that because I was trained on the business side of medicine. And the way you do that is volume.
Mm.
If Medicare and Medicaid only pays you a little bit per patient and there's no way to change that pay structure, then obviously you got to see more patients to bring in more revenue to keep the doors open. And so that's what I did because I was trained how to do that. 7 minutes is an average primary care physician visit today, a PCP visit. And I knew how to do that, crank through them. And they taught me how to do that in a way that would make the patient feel like you were actually in there for 15 minutes. Good eye contact, make some physical contact, put your hand on their knee or their shoulder, and just some basic human decency and
So
courtesy.
they trained you in all of that.
Yes, they did.
Wow.
And they
Okay.
trained us that procedures, that means things you do with your hand, will reimburse better. So if we just use our mouth to talk to you about your diabetes, high blood pressure, acid reflux, that's a certain code that you send to the insurance or Medicare and you get paid a certain amount just talking. But if you do something like pick earwax out of someone's ear, cut out an ingrown toenail, cut out a sebaceous cyst, anything you did with your hands paid more than a visit where you just talk. So you learn to combo those visits. Let's talk about your diabetes while I cut off a wart or a mole or a whatever. But anyways, just a little the backstory there. They trained us how to do all that. So I was doing it successfully to the tune of the county clinic was self-sufficient. The tax money coming in to fund the clinic was not needed. So it was sitting in the bank, growing in the bank account. They built a brand new $1 million clinic. And after they paid that $1 million note off in 1 year, a year after that, there's $1 million in the bank account. So now a new clinic, $1 million in the healthcare district bank account. The Washington Post came and basically put all this on the front page. So now we're famous, we're rich, we got a new clinic, everything's like going perfect.
In Post, Texas.
Yes. So I'm doing the house calls, Friday night football game, team doctor, the nursing home doctor, the county jail doctor, juvenile detention doctor. I'm living my dream, raising the kids, my wife and I, Jamie. At this point, we had 4 kids. And then boom, out of nowhere, not looking for anything alternative, holistic, outside the box. It landed right in my lap when my nurse practitioner at the time who was helping me, I'd hired some help because we were so busy. And he went to a bed and breakfast one weekend in Amarillo, Texas. And my nurse practitioner has celiac disease where you cannot eat gluten or you get sick. So he told the innkeeper, I need a gluten-free pancake. The lady said, I'll make that for you. But there's a doctor here that could cure you of that, is what this lady told my nurse prac, which you don't get cured of celiac or any disease, autoimmune for sure. And my nurse prac kind of laughed but the lady kept persisting and to be polite, and the doctor's office was right there in the bed and breakfast. My nurse prac said, I'll talk to the guy, just get you to shut up, lady. And that doctor touched my nurse practitioner in a way by what he was saying. It was about a 4 hour conversation, my nurse prac told me later, and convinced my nurse prac, just try some stuff.
Yeah.
Get your stomach acid levels back to where they're designed to be and supposed to be in your stomach. You're supposed to be pumping so much hydrochloric acid into your stomach that your pH goes down to a 1 to 2. Battery acid is 1.5. So you're supposed to be pumping that much acid. So when that bread or gluten comes down, it should be basically dissolved by battery acid, meaning That protein never even gets downstream to irritate your gut or immune system. And then he would say stuff that, this is the doctor talking to my nurse prac, would say, hey, there's 94 different strains of probiotics, good gut bacteria that we know break down gluten. So gluten's not even an issue. So he was saying stuff like that and other things that made my nurse prac go, huh, that kind of makes sense, enough to have my nurse prac decide to make some of these changes, which were just all natural, nothing prescription. It's just changing the diet, doing some supplements, probiotics, different things. Long story short, my nurse prac decided to try what this guy said to do. And over 3 or 4 months, my nurse prac felt like he was getting healed, and ultimately all the way healed.
Of celiac.
And he came and told me this like 4 months into it. He didn't tell me what he was doing that whole time till the end. He started eating wheat and he was fine. And he came and told me that. And so that's how it started, was my nurse prac telling me that his
Wow.
gut was healed. Now, I did what most doctors and general public would do, is say, no way, impossible. That there's some, he must have been misdiagnosed to begin with. He didn't really have celiac,
Yeah.
or maybe this was some miracle one-off thing or whatever. But bottom line, you and I asked the same questions. I doubted. I couldn't believe it. The nurse prac went and got a breakfast burrito and ate it right in front of me because I didn't believe him. He ate a hamburger from Holly's Burger Joint and Post right in front of me the same day. And then he ate cookies that a drug rep brought that afternoon. 3 gluten exposures in one day, and he was totally fine, to prove me wrong, because I was saying there's
Yeah.
no way. Anyways, all that. So I got to this point of, in my kind of ethical, moral decision point of, I knew I was going to have another celiac patient come see me someday. So what was I going to tell him?
Yeah.
Was I going to give him the conventional MD Anderson conventional medicine answer that I learned in medical school, eat gluten-free the rest of your life? Or was I going to give him that answer plus a second option that may or may not work for you? I don't know, but at least tell them about Shane's testimony, which conventional medicine would say don't do that, because that's just an anecdotal report. Anecdotal reports in conventional evidence-based medicine is basically not evidence at all. It's at the very lowest level of quote unquote evidence, even though God's word says it's the testimony and the blood of the lamb that's going to overcome the dragon. But
Yeah.
so conventional docs, we don't listen to these one testimony stories because it's not good enough evidence. But in the moment, I felt this is powerful and I at least need to give them the option. So that's how it started. But of course, that led to, he's my nurse practitioner under my medical license. I got to know what he's going to be saying in that room. So I
Right.
called this doctor up and I started grilling him. Who are you? Are you an MD? Are you some kind of quack or what? I mean, this was so arrogant. Us physician, I'm saying, physician, we're trained that way. It's just bred
Yeah.
into us, even if you're not naturally bent that way. But anyways, just, hey, what are you doing? What are you talking about? What is all this stomach acid and blah blah? And he would just start saying stuff like, Ben, this is the doctor in Amarillo, would say, Ben, there's no such thing as diseases. There are consequences. And I was like, no such thing as diseases. What do you mean? And I read down my
Wow.
list of diseases that day that I saw in my patients: lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and diabetes and asthma and depression and all the things. And he said, no, those are all consequences. If you weren't born with it, you don't need to keep it. If it ends in itis, and even if it doesn't end in itis, itis, like rheumatoid arthritis or
Yeah.
diverticulitis or sinusitis or bursitis or any itis, that's obvious inflammation. But he said, go home tonight and Google the word inflammation and depression, fibromyalgia, cancer, heart attacks, AD, autism, all of them. And what you're going to find is a connection between inflammation and every disease. And he was right. I went home, I looked it up, and it was true. There's this thing called inflammation that's this common denominator. So he would just throw enough at me like that where I'd go back for more. Okay, I'm tracking, but how could this be? We get in that cognitive dissonance. How could this one guy be right And all my professors in residency, in medical school, in all the associations, all these top smart doctors in all the different groups, Harvard, Mayo, American Heart Association, all that. How could all those people be wrong? There's
Right.
no way that this one guy's. So it took me a while. In a key moment, he said type 2 diabetes, totally reversible. And I'm like, what? No way. Now, this was
Yeah.
2011, 2012-ish. Now it's, I think, known that you can do this, but back then I didn't know. No one said that.
No.
I didn't,
Yeah.
there's no way.
It
And
was fringe medical.
yeah,
Like that stuff was, or not, you wouldn't even call it medical. It was fringe
yeah, just hocus
ideas.
pocus
Yeah.
quackery stuff. But that struck me because half of Garza County was diabetic. My patients were diabetic. And I
Wow.
knew that if you're type 2 diabetic, you increase your risk of heart attack and stroke and Alzheimer's and cancer and everything. You increase your risk of death from COVID, all the stuff. So if you can really eliminate that one thing, then you just help that patient reduce their risk of all this stuff down the road. So I thought, man, that's amazing. And then he sent me some evidence and some videos and more anecdotal reports to look at. And so that was real interesting to me. And I got real curious at that point. I'm busy. I'm running my practice, 40 patients a day, doing all that. This is on the side. And then that cognitive dissonance is kicking in and all that. So it took a while. And then the last straw that broke the camel's back, one day I called him and he said, or I said, hey, I'm busy. We're raising babies. I've got 40 patients. I'm just busy. Can you just send me one book that kind of summarizes all this alternative medicine? And he yelled at me in the phone and he said, alternative? What do you mean alternative? And I said, it's just this different kind of quack, hocus pocus. And he said, okay, Ben, Mr. Big Shot, famous on the front page of the Washington Post. You're so busy in your clinic, brand new $1 million clinic, but you're so busy, you're probably busting at the seams already. And when you need to expand your clinic and build an addition onto the clinic, who are you going to call to design that addition? You're going to call the engineer or the alternative engineer. Next time you get on an airplane to fly to a medical conference, you're going to call the aviation guys to fly you there or the alternative aviation guys. Next time your car's making a weird noise, you're going to call the mechanic or the alternative mechanic. And his point being, and he just came right out and said it, Ben, God designed this whole thing. Every mechanic has to follow the same law of internal combustion
Hmm.
engines. Every pilot follows the same law of aerodynamics. Every doctor should follow the same law of how the human body was designed to work. And you need to be a good doctor and be a detective and drill down into why is this amazing design not working right? If stomach acid is designed to be in the stomach to dissolve all that food so you can absorb the nutrients, what is it doing up in the esophagus causing heartburn? It's never supposed to be there, not designed to be there, and there's a reason it's there. Be a good doctor, dig down, get to the root, figure it out, fix it instead of just treat a symptom, because in medical school you got taught to give a prescription that suppresses a symptom. High blood sugar is a symptom, not a disease, and you can give a pill to just make the body urinate out that extra blood sugar, so it makes the number come down out of the blood so everyone's happy, but it's not fixing the actual problem of why can the body no longer burn sugar for fuel. It's supposed to be. It was earlier in this person's life. Why can't they burn sugar for fuel? There's a reason to that. Don't just give a pill that makes you urine out the extra sugar and deal with these symptoms. Same with high blood pressure, same with acid reflux, everything. Now, I'm not against, I do conventional medicine still. If someone's got a bad migraine headache and you can write a prescription for Imitrex and they pop that pill and their migraine goes away so they can come do a podcast interview, who wouldn't do that? If you had a bad migraine, that's awesome. I'm not,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't leave someone there.
Yeah.
And you can fill in the blank on anything here. Fibromyalgia pill, diabetes pill, high blood pressure pill, heart attack pills, cholesterol pills, whatever. Give the pill, fine, but that's a quick fix symptom relief. It's not actually getting to the problem. So
Right.
do a symptom relief, put the Band-Aid to try to relieve that symptom, but now come back and let's talk about going deeper to fix it so you never get a migraine again.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was possible. And that's what the doctor was telling me is it's possible to get down there because these are all new diseases. And this will go into the epigenetic thing. These new diseases like type 2 diabetes and the Pima Indians in Southeast Arizona are a great example. A Native American tribe pre-World War II never had diabetes. ever in their recorded history. Post World War II to today, now 50% of their tribe has type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
Genes don't change that fast. It's the same genetic makeup of that tribe. So there's something else at play. And we'll get into more examples of that, that there's things above the genes or outside the genes that can turn these genes on and off. And then that doctor told me the first heart attack in America was in 1912. The first recorded in the medical literature in this country, one in the whole country, one in 1912 was the first one. And now it's the number one killer of Americans. 600,000 people a year die of heart disease. And he started pointing to just over the past 110 years, this
Yeah.
escalation of chronic disease that came out of nowhere, but it's rooted in inflammation. He was just all this. And I finally, when he said, be a good doctor, that really hit me. And then the final piece was he said, just send me your 10 sickest patients. I'm tired of arguing with you. Send me your worst diabetic whose sugar's through the roof. He's on all the pills for it, and you have to give him insulin now, but he refuses to do shots of insulin because he just doesn't like needles. Send that guy to me. Send me your worst fibromyalgia patient that no one's helping, your worst lupus patient, your worst chronic urticaria, chronic prostatitis, all these really tough cases that had been to all the specialists. So I did. I sent them my toughest ones. They all came back well, off their meds, no longer diabetic, no longer with lupus symptoms, no longer with fibromyalgia symptoms, no longer recurring prostate infection. That the guy had been to urology multiple times on chronic antibiotics. These are my patients
Yeah.
for 7 years. So
No
that,
longer antidotal. Like it is like you're seeing
yeah.
true change, true healing.
And that's why I went to med school. And I think most doctors go for that reason.
Yeah.
I want to help someone feel better, get better, but then we get narrowly trained. We get two tools put into our toolbox, a prescription pad and a surgeon's scalpel. And that's about it. And then in the more natural realm, there's just a whole lot more tools in their toolboxes. So there's herbs, there's different supplements and IVs and ozone and ultraviolet blood irradiation and infrared light therapies and all these other tools, which are really cool and more natural, obviously. But even those, you've got to be careful. And I'm not against either one. I use the whole
Yeah.
toolbox as needed in each individual case, whatever's best and whatever the patient wants to do, because the patient's the boss, not the doctor. What the patient is wanting to do is huge, and we have forgotten that. But anyways, we got to be careful with this big toolbox because that's still putting the onus on the doctor, the healer, the practitioner to heal the person, and that's backwards. We've
Yeah.
got to flip this and understand, no, the design is in here by God for this thing to function. This immune system should identify cancer cells and kill them before there's ever a tumor. They should identify germs and kill those before we have symptoms. They should keep the blood sugar and the acid down in the stomach, all the things. It should all work it's designed to. So some of these therapies, even in the natural realm, can just treat a symptom. And we really got to go deeper. And where I've landed after 13 years of more natural, holistic practicing of medicine is what we call the four pillars: nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace, which actually the Lord gave me those four things real early, like month or one or two after
Wow.
I left. So Garza County, I have to end that. Basically, I went to the board and told them, hey, I'm learning this stuff. People get well, their diabetes goes away, their diseases go away, but it takes 1 to 2 hours to do a visit like this, not 7 minutes. So if enough people ask me to do one of those kind of visits, I'm actually going to say yes. So potentially we could get down to 8 visits a day, an hour each, instead of these 7-minute visits, 40 patients. So meaning the money's going to go away and we're going to go back in the red. So they fired me. The next week, I opened Veritas, which is Latin for truth. My wife and I decided this is just a truth. And so we just Googled what's truth in Greek and Latin, and veritasmedical.com was available as a website. Grabbed it, and Veritas Medical was born. And then Veritas Wellness a couple years ago, because we just got
Yeah.
so convinced a doctor cannot, even a holistic one, cannot cure you, cannot fix you. We can teach and should be just teaching,
Mhm.
teaching, and give them symptom treatment fine out of compassion and love. I'd want symptom treatment too. If I'm suffering, I'm not against it.
Yeah.
But while we're doing that, let's keep going deeper and deeper. And every case is unique and individual. And sometimes it's purely physical. There can be an absolute physical. I just had a patient moved into a parsonage of a little church in a little town in the Midwest, and it was full of black mold. The
Oh.
sheetrock from a water leak, and they hadn't fixed it. They painted over, and it was just a toxic. That
Mm.
mold that grows behind the wall like that produces a toxin, gets into the air, and these kids, all her kids were sick. She was super sick. Anyways, so we need to know some things where environmentally there can be toxins of different sort. There's heavy metals, there's root canal bacteria, there's different things. So I'm not, it can be physical for sure.
Yeah.
But the terrain, which is our internal, our microbiome, our nutrient levels, our food nutrition levels from 1950 to 1990s, I did a study, and we've absolutely depleted the minerals in our food because of the farming. We need magnesium. We need certain minerals to run the enzymes in the body. The enzyme that turns, when that sun hits your skin and turns that cholesterol in your skin into vitamin D, well,
Hmm.
that doesn't just poof happen. It's an enzyme that does some cleaving of that cholesterol molecule to change it into a different molecule. That enzyme that does the work, magnesium is the mineral that turns that enzyme on.
Wow.
And if you don't have magnesium, then you're going to have low vitamin D potentially just from not having that enzyme activity
To
because of
be able
low
to,
mag, because we didn't have it in our food. And even if you get it in your food, guess what? You have your stomach acid to break it down to absorb the magnesium. Even if you're
yeah.
supplementing magnesium, if your pH is a 4 or a 5 instead of a 1, then you're not going to absorb near as much as you would if you had the right pH. What turns off those pH pumps, those acid pumps? High sugar diet and stress, fight or flight mode
Mhm.
is the number
Yeah.
one thing. So at the end of the day, we dig down deep enough, you realize, wow, the body is amazingly designed. If it's not in fight or flight mode all day long, every day,
Right.
if it does get deep nutrition and good hydration and good sunshine and good sleep, and these certain things the body requires to function, there's certain things that will disrupt that function. So give the body what it needs and avoid what it doesn't, and it'll be a better cancer detector and COVID killer than any protocol man could come up with. And
Yeah.
I'm not anti those protocols. I prescribed a ton of ivermectin during COVID. I saw what it did. So it's not either or, this is good, that's bad, don't do that. No, I'm just saying the better your terrain is, the less you'll need ivermectin, or when you do need it, you'll just need one dose maybe, but probably not at all. And this is what, I'm sorry, I'll wrap this up, but
No, you're doing great. This is awesome.
if what I found also on this journey was there was a doctor, he was a dentist in Cleveland, Ohio in the 1920s. Remember I said heart attacks started in 1912. And so did everything else, hypertension and arthritis and all these things. So by the 1920s, mid 1920s, this dentist in Cleveland is seeing his patients and seeing all these diseases that he hadn't seen before. And he told his wife, something is going on with Americans. They're having this stuff called high blood pressure and arthritis and malignancies, tumors, and all this stuff. And he decided, it's awesome that he decided to do this. He leaves Cleveland, he and his wife, and they travel. They decided to travel the whole world and try to find people in the world that were not starting to get all these diseases. And he found 14 different people groups all over the world. So the Native Americans in Canada and Alaskan Eskimos, and then he went to the South Pacific Islanders, then he went to the Amazon rainforest, and he spent a year at each location. Then he went across the Atlantic to the British Isles, and then to the Swiss Alps and into Africa and some other places. 14 groups all together. He put it in an amazing book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. This doctor's name is Weston A. Price.
I will put that in our notes.
Weston A.
I think we
Price.
actually got this book because of you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's an amazing chronicle of what he discovered. And basically, in a nutshell, what he discovered is when these tribes started to eat what he called modern food, then modern diseases ensued. And modern food back then, he described it as processed white flour and processed sugar. White flour, white sugar, basically, when that came into a culture, into a village, and they started consume that within one generation, they're seeing these problems, as opposed to ancestral eating. So real food, God food is what we call it. God food, not man food. As soon as man puts his hand on God's food, doesn't mean it's off limits necessarily, but it means you should at least be responsible enough to analyze why did man do that? What did he do to it? What was the motive behind it? And almost always what you're going to find is man changed God's food to improve shelf life or sellability, like the flavor enhancer or the addictive nature of the food, but shelf life also. So for profit, which I'm not against profit, but when it's at the expense of someone's health, we got to
Right.
weigh that. But in a
Just
nutshell, that's what he found.
real quick, because I remember seeing a picture, a slide that you showed at the conference, and it was how many tomatoes. So even though you talk about God food these days, the hardest thing is like you showed a picture of it used to be one tomato to get all of these nutrients. Now it's you have to have 13 of these tomatoes or how many ever was on your
Yeah, that particular slide was on in regards to iron that was in an apple. It looked like a
okay.
tomato.
Enough. Okay.
But in 19, I believe it's 58, it took one apple in what was in one apple in 1958. It took 26 apples in 1997. Now that's 1997. Now it's
That's
2025. So it's
yeah.
50 apples now. But yeah, the nutrient depletion. And then people don't realize you have a pharmacy in your gut called your microbiome. These are all the critters, the microbes in the gut. They can make vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin K, some of the B vitamins. So that's like this backup system that even when you're not able to consume enough, your probiotics can kick into gear, make it. But you have to have your probiotics. And
Yeah.
that's another thing of processed food kills your microbiome. And that's what we have found in studies. It shows a modern American or a modern Western person, 5,000 different species on average of microbes. Sounds like a lot, but if you go to the Amazon rainforest and study those natives microbiome, 30,000 species.
Wow.
So we've whittled and narrowed this thing down.
Oh,
I mentioned 94 strains that'll break down gluten. Well, there's strains that break down BPA, which is a chemical in plastic water bottles that acts like estrogen and we get too much of. But
yeah.
there's a bacteria that'll break that down. There's bacteria that break down different pesticides, which I'm not a proponent of eating pesticides on purpose, but you got this protective layer of bacteria that can neutralize all that.
Mm.
But we've got to nourish those microbes and get the diversity back, and we've lost that. So
Yeah.
we've lost minerals and nutrients, vitamins and minerals in the food. We've lost our probiotics. We've lost the ability to make cellular energy. Where that doctor said, go look up inflammation and all these diseases, and there's a connection where inflammation comes from your cell, any cell. Brain cells are called neurons, heart muscle cells, cardiac muscle cells, liver cells, any cell of the body. These cells have jobs to do, but to do a job, you have to have energy. To
Yeah.
make energy, you take fuel plus oxygen plus spark plug. This is just like the carburetor in your vehicle. Fuel plus oxygen plus spark equals combustion. Energy is produced to turn your wheels in your car. But for that cell to have energy to perform its job, energy in the body is called ATP. So this molecule called ATP gets produced. And you produced heat in your vehicle that goes out the radiator. But in the body, that's what gives you your body heat. And then there's exhaust going out the tailpipe, but in you, it's called free radicals. So
Mm.
these free radicals, if there's too much of them, if they don't get neutralized, which your body has a free radical neutralizing system in place, but it runs off minerals. Anyways, it's a beautiful design for cellular energy production, just like in your vehicle, this carburetor. So this thing's called the mitochondria. We have mitochondria carburetors in every cell, hundreds of them. Some cells have thousands. And if that mitochondria, just like your carburetor, if this mitochondria starts to get gunked up, damaged somehow, inefficiency will happen. Your miles per gallon will go down. That means your ATP energy molecule production goes down. And the exhaust going out the tailpipe goes up. You need a carburetor tune up. So your
So that's like
standard,
fatigue and brain fog, and like those would be this.
those are for sure, those are obvious fatigue, but even just fill in the blank disease,
Yeah.
diabetes, if your pancreas cannot mount enough energy to do its job, then diabetes can ensue. If your immune system can't make enough energy to do its job, then you're going to get every infection that comes through school or life or cancer, because cancer is just something the immune system should take care of, no problem.
Yeah.
So it's really every disease you can root it down to mitochondrial inefficiency that needs a tune-up. And your standard American way of living, including being in a seated position in this chair right now, if you're seated 8 hours a day, that damages that carburetor big time.
Mm.
Even working out at the end of the day, which is beneficial and good to do, and I recommend that, but it doesn't erase the negative of the 8 hours. So you need to get up every hour and go work out at the end of the day too. It's fine. But so it's stuff
Do it
like
all.
it's artificial lights right now as opposed to sunlight. There are
Yeah.
photons from the sun that go through your skin and they interplay with your carburetor. There's actual receptors for photon light particles in your carburetors. So it's these basic things: sunlight, minerals, real food, not seated all day. But the biggest, and so all these are epigenetic factors. So I didn't finish that. The free radicals, that's the exhaust. So if your carburetor's gunked up, your mitochondria, you're not making enough energy in the cellular level, and you're making way too much exhaust, that's the free radicals. Those free radicals will go over to your nucleus in your cell in the DNA, and it'll turn on your bad genes like the BRCA gene for breast cancer, ladies, or the prostate cancer gene, or the
Yeah.
Alzheimer's gene. So genes are like books on a bookshelf. If you walked into a library and there's 25,000 books, it's about how many genes we have. That's great. And they're full of information on how to build proteins and stuff. But somebody, you got to tell the librarian which shelf to go to, which book to pull off that shelf, which page to turn to, and which
Mhm.
paragraph to read.
Yeah.
So that instruction for that expression of the gene called genetic expression is done by us. We're the ones by sitting all day, smoking, processed sugar, seed oils, all that inflammation, it turns on these bad ones. There was a Dr. Dean Ornish at UCLA, this is years ago. He took prostate cancer patients. He biopsied their prostate cancer cells and studied the genes. And certain genes we know are they're called oncogenes or cancer promoting genes. The prostate cancer oncogene was turned on in these patients. And then there's another gene that's a cancer suppressor gene, and
Mm.
that gene will help suppress cancer. That gene in these patients was turned off.
Wow.
He took those patients, put them through, I think it was 6 months of stress management and diet changes. Then he went back 6 months later, did another biopsy. The cancer grow gene turned off. The cancer suppressor gene turned on, and their PSA cancer blood test came down to normal. That's just one of, I can't even tell you how many studies now make it absolutely clear we are not victims of our genes. There was a Dr. Day, he wrote a book called The Longevity Plan. I interviewed him actually years ago on my podcast. It's a great book. But Dr. Day, he's a cardiologist. And at the time, he was in his late 40s, mid to late 40s, on 8 different medications for high blood pressure and cholesterol and acid reflux and depression. I forget what all. And he goes to China, gives a lecture, medical lecture. And the colleagues over there, the Chinese doctors are like, man, I guess they got to talking, but somehow he revealed that he's on all these meds and basically he's a sick guy. But that's
Yeah.
just normal in America now. But anyways, the Chinese doctor said, man, you need to go out to this village. We call it the longevity village is the nickname in China. He said, because the people out there, they don't have any diseases and they live to be 110, 115 and healthy. They have
Yeah.
their mental facilities still, and they're just healthy. You should go study them. So he did. He went out and observed what do they eat, what do they drink, how do they exercise, all the things, how much sleep do they get, blah, blah, blah. But he went a step further and he drew their blood and he looked for the genes that cause Alzheimer's or predispose you, not cause, predispose, set you up for, we thought caused
You're right.
cancer, Alzheimer's, all the things. And they had all those same genes, but they didn't have the diseases. So whether you look back in history and see that pre-1912, there's no such thing as heart attacks, heart disease, the number one killer, lung cancer was so rare, every single case got published, or you look at Dr. Day in these blue zones, we call them around the world, where people live healthy and long. It's not the genes that are driving this thing. It's totally epigenetic. You can keep those genes turned off. And honestly, what gets passed down from granddad to dad to son, so much of it is how we live.
Yeah.
How did your dad and his dad before him handle bad news or
Mhm.
stress or anger or disappointment? How did they prioritize eating real food and cooking as a family and having a family meal? Did they prioritize exercise? Were they outside in the sun or were they scared of the sun? Whatever. We learn our habits not only eating habits, but all our habits. We learn it from our parents. So that's getting passed down as much as the genes are. So it's this combination. But in general, in America, across the board, we changed our food, processed grain, processed sugar, and vegetable oils, seed oils. Those are the big three. We call them. Avoid those like the plague because they gunk up your carburetor big
Yeah.
time. And then we sit all the time. We're under artificial light all the time, and we're stressed all the time. It's this perfect storm. A lot of it food, some of it non-food. And the recipe is what it ends up, it destroys your carburetor. And now we're all sick pretty much. I mean, I think the last study, 93% of Americans have gunked up carburetors. They're not
Yeah.
metabolically fit. Over 50% of kids have a chronic disease now. Your average adult's on 4 different prescriptions. We went from the healthiest group in the world pre-World War II to the sickest. We die younger than anybody. We have the most diseases. More of our babies died than anybody. More of our moms in pregnancy died than anybody. We're the sickest country, get the worst outcomes.
Yeah.
So this quote unquote
And we
convention,
are the most, almost the, not the most educated, but highly educated, highly,
we
highly pharmaceutical.
yes, we
And
take more drugs than anybody, go to the
yeah,
doctor more than anybody, utilize the quote unquote healthcare, which is sick care system more than anybody to get the worst outcomes. And nobody knows this. People are waking up now with Maha and
yeah,
Bobby Kennedy and all that.
yes,
And because of our outcomes are so bad, doctors like me are so popular or so busy. We have waiting lists, and most doctors I talk to, like myself, have waiting lists because the people have figured it out, unfortunately, the hard way.
right.
Suffering. They've been to all these doctors and can't get answers. Their kids are sick and suffering. So out of all this suffering, people are opening their eyes, looking for a quote unquote alternative. And 1910-ish is when this really changed. John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie asked a guy named Abraham Flexner, who was an education expert, to survey the landscape of medical education in the United States in the early 1900s. So the guy did, and he reported back to Carnegie and Rockefeller and said, there's too much chaos out there. There's homeopathic medical schools, there's naturopathic medical schools, there are herbalist schools, chiropractic schools, allopathic, osteopathic, all these different. And he said, I recommend you standardize it to one. And he
Wow.
recommended allopathic, which is the pharmaceutical based treat a symptom. And that's what happened. All the money went to those schools, those hospitals, those teaching institutions, and those research labs. And everybody else was marginalized, some criminalized.
Yeah.
And if you practiced medicine and weren't licensed by an AMA accredited school, meaning allopathic, then it was illegal for you to practice medicine that way. So all the homeopathic schools shut down, naturopathic, all that. And all those other modalities, the natural ones, they came alongside in parallel with the body's natural healing mechanisms that God put into us, where allopathic is the one that just totally crushes and suppresses chemically. And that is leading to these horrible outcomes because you're not getting to the root and you're only treating the smoke, not the fire. If you're sitting on your couch in the living room tonight watching TV and smoke starts filling your room, fine. Jump up, open the door and the window and turn on the fans to clear that smoke because you're going to
Mhm.
die from smoke inhalation. Most house fire victims do. But so it's not against treating a symptom. Get that smoke cleared. But don't go sit back down on the couch and keep
Right.
watching TV because you're going to die earlier than you should because that fire is going to consume the whole house. And that's what's happening in our body. We don't get to the kitchen and put out the fire. Doctors don't know how to. They don't know you can. They're not trained in this. They're not educated at all. They're totally blind and
Yeah.
naive. And now they're arrogant. And now their paycheck is connected because I don't want to sound like some hero. When they came, well, I knew
Yeah.
this financial thing at the old clinic, this ain't going to work. So I thought about shutting up because what will people think about me?
Yeah.
What will all the town think about me? What will my granddads think about me? What will my colleagues think about me? Where's my paycheck going to come from? We have 4 babies. Now we have 6, but they're grown. But anyways, I'm a human. Those thoughts come and it's
Yeah.
even worse now. That's what happened during COVID. There's doctors in the system may have seen what was going on, but they say anything, all that public pressure, all the propaganda, and boy, their paycheck's on the line. They've got a mortgage. They got kids in school. It's a bad deal, but the
Yeah.
people are suffering because of it. And so that's what I'm doing.
And it has created, like, what has happened has created an incredible distrust where
Yeah.
people won't do anything. It's like no longer will I can't go to the doctor. I'm afraid of the doctor.
Yep.
But then they're also afraid of the holistic and the
Yeah.
naturopath and all that
Yeah.
because I've been taught that's voodoo,
Yeah.
and but I can't, I'm afraid to go to normal PCP
Yeah.
because I don't want to get what they're
Absolutely. It's
prescribing.
the number one chief complaint we have of new patients coming in now is I don't trust my doctor.
Yeah.
Before I walked in to do this podcast, just had a patient new to me, was diagnosed with diverticulitis, which is infection of his colon, these little weak pouches in the colon wall, by a PCP. I believe diagnosed appropriately, given a prescription for two antibiotics to take. But the guy going into that visit didn't trust his system, anyways, what you're talking about. And then the visit was 2 minutes long, the patient was telling me. So that
Mm,
just added on to the distrust. And he never got the prescription filled.
yeah.
A diverticulitis flare that's not treated, that can actually perforate and be deadly. I mean,
Yeah.
super sick in the ICU with a perforated colon. That's exactly what you're talking about, is what is happening in the real world, the lack of trust. And then they're just in this no man's land. And
And
it's
they're
all,
afraid. And can I ask you a personal question real quick?
yep.
Because it sounds like you were convicted. I love how you're like, and I think I know what you're saying. It just it fell into your lap, just this whole your nurse pract your NP, you're a nurse practitioner who did this healing and got healed because he took responsibility of his health and did some things. And then you started questioning it, started poking holes into a very personal reality for you. And then at some point you had to choose to change. Just
Yeah.
like people who are navigating this health journey, they're gonna have to choose to change, but you risked it because the belief of healing and the belief of wholeness was greater than I can't, I'm not gonna, I can't risk, or I'm going to risk losing it. But I love hearing you say it still scared the daylights out of me because you think about several of the doctors that are connected to gigantic hospital systems. It's like they don't have private practices. They've not never done a private practice. And as I think about my previous PCP, right? They're connected to a giant hospital system and they're not private practice. And so like you said, they're risking it. They have families, they have mortgages, they have whatever they have. And so just a personal question, like how did you, it doesn't sound like it was a quick decision. It was definitely over time, but how did you make that decision to go, I can no longer avoid this reality?
Probably the biggest thing was just the patient outcomes. These are my patients, in
Yeah.
a small town, you go to church with them, school, your kids are in school with them, just they're your friends and fellow townspeople and just human beings. But when they get better,
Yeah.
awesome. And I don't know any doctor who wouldn't go, wow, that was awesome. I'm not saying you might not go home that night and still justify in your brain how you couldn't really pursue that. But for
Yeah.
me, I think it's something God put in me, a love of the truth. And once
Yeah.
I see that, especially when it's regards to a human being's health and well-being and symptoms and all that, it's like, how can you not? But honestly, looking back now with hindsight, it was a few years before, this is probably 4 years before, my wife and I got down on our knees and we prayed and asked God to, we were trying to get pregnant with our second child and it had been 24 months of infertility. And we read
Mm.
in Matthew, seek ye first the kingdom. And it hit us that we were seeking a baby and a big family, not the kingdom. Like our emotional roller coaster every time that pregnancy test was negative for 20 times 24. And it just hit us that day. We're not seeking the kingdom. And our next thought was, we don't know what the kingdom is. We've been in church our whole life, but what's that
We
even?
know the scripture.
Yeah. But so that's looking back as we earnestly prayed that, Lord, number one, forgive us for not seeking the kingdom first, seeking
Yeah.
this other thing, and our desires, our self-centeredness really is what it boiled down to. And show us what the kingdom is. And that was an earnest prayer. Had no idea. I really think that opened it up, that heart posture. We really
Yeah.
want to know the kingdom. And the kingdom's all of this, not just on the health side, obviously, but that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
And as you pursue the truth, pursue the kingdom, seek and knock and ask and have an open heart and confess, because the very next confession I had in that same prayer, forgive me for not seeking the kingdom, show me what the kingdom is. And then I prayed, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. Because at that moment, I had a lot of religion in me, but I had a lot of Darwin in me and evolution in me from schooling. So I had
Yeah.
tons of unbelief. And if Genesis isn't true, then how could the whole Bible be true? And just so much there. But honest confession, just getting honest with yourself. Even if
Yes.
you're mad at God or you don't even know if God's really there, is he real? Or where were you when I got hurt over here? Or whatever it is, just that honest, that'll open the heart to the truth being poured in. It's a light coming into that dark, and the dark's just where the truth is, the light's not there. And if you
Yeah.
seek it, it'll come
Yeah. How fast did y'all get pregnant after that?
the next month.
The next month. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love it's that surrender when you surrender and release that,
Yeah.
what you want. And it's not wrong to have desires because God wants to love on us. He created all those beautiful, wonderful things for us. And I love just as once you surrender that the focus and you seek first the kingdom, then everything gets added. So I love that. So real quick, I know I want to honor your time but real quick, so one of the things, so you can change genes because
Oh
you were
yeah.
talking about the genes being turned off, the
Yeah.
cancer genes being turned on, and the healing. I can't remember how you said it, but the healing gene
Cancer
being turned off.
suppressor gene.
The
Yeah.
suppressor and the client, your patients and clients, and I've heard stories after stories of different people who are literally changing their genes. And we were raised in school that your genes are your genes. Like
Yeah.
you can't change them. I remember learning that in science.
Yeah.
And now no, that's not true.
Yep.
So
Well,
spend
just
it.
like neuroplasticity, y'all talk about, you can change. We used to think the brain was just there and
Yeah.
concrete and doesn't change. And no, neuroplasticity is now common knowledge.
Yes.
But
And
yeah,
so if you were like, you have somebody come in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about just as we wrap up, just what you do and how people can get connected to you because you have a on-demand course. Is it on demand? Is that correct?
yep,
So people can get started there because you, I'm sure, have an incredible waiting list and all of that and how people can get started. But if people just like today, if somebody's listening to this going, like, where do I start? Oh my gosh, I know I'm not supposed to eat processed foods. I know I'm not supposed to eat sugars. I know I'm not supposed to eat seed oils and I have to get sun. And it's like they're stressing out. And all I teach is instead of that, be curious. It's be curious instead of worry, because I
okay,
think that's the antidote to worry and anxiety is curiosity. But what would you tell somebody to just, if this is like their baby step, they're terrified of a PCP, but they don't know what to do and they're riddled with disease and all of that. What would you say to them?
exactly what you say. That curiosity thing, just number one, honestly, it's not a Bible verse religious answer of seek the kingdom first. Talk to God about it. Our whole thing that we teach is based off the belief that there's a creator that
Yeah.
loves you and he made you and designed you. And we can't just chalk it up to, oh, we're living in this fallen world and sin and sickness and dying and all that. No, because our ancestors didn't have these diseases. So there's more to it. But that honest conversation is where I would start number one. Because otherwise, if I just lay out, here's 5 steps in the natural, quit eating sugar, add some sea salt, get up every hour, add 10,000 steps and 60 minutes of resistance training and this much morning sunrise. All those are good. And I do
Yeah.
recommend all those, but we can actually put those up as our savior, our
Yeah.
idol. And we
Yes.
just get so focused on that. I would act, I'd start talking to God about number one. And yeah, if you're pretty standard American, the things that will help that carb the most in the physical, I believe, is get the seed oils out of your life. No more margarine, Crisco, vegetable oils, the canola and soybean oil, all the cheap that's in the processed food and restaurant food. You can find there's some restaurants that use butter and tallow, but they're
Oh, yeah.
few and far between. So seed oil is number one. Number two, cut the processed sugar. God's version of sugar is honey, maple syrup. If you're addicted to sugar, though, high fructose corn syrup is very addictive. That's what's in all the processed food. You may need to fast from sugar for a minute, for 30 days or something. And sometimes we fast from other foods too, but that's another thing.
Yeah.
But those are simple steps. Cut out the margins, use real butter. Cut out the man salt, which is table salt, add sea salt. Literally get up every hour and just walk around a little bit. Get 10 minutes of morning sunshine. Sit outside and drink your coffee watching the sunrise. Little things like this while you're getting educated.
Yes.
That's what the You're the Cure program is. It's 9 modules, multi-video. I forget how many dozens of videos, dozens of PDFs with recipes and how you do workouts and how you
Right.
do different things. And it's not crazy stuff, it's basic stuff that your ancestors were doing. But it's all kind of curated content in this one digestible. I mean, it's got some meat to it, but it's not you. We have a wellness program with community groups and a whole library of courses. I'm releasing an epigenetics course this coming week, and it's all on what we talked about a little
Nice.
bit. It's not about your genes. There's a course on cholesterol. High cholesterol doesn't cause heart attacks. There's a whole course on that. So the website membership has all this content, but it's like a ton. And you can do one-on-one consults, community groups on Zoom and all that. But the You're the Cure course would, if this is totally foreign and new to you, I'd probably start with the course first called You're the Cure.
That's good. And I will make sure all of that is in the show notes because, yeah, lead you to that. And then I think the key proponent here is so many times we want to blame the food system. We want to blame the pharmaceuticals. We want to blame the doctors. We want to blame. And the thing is, we have to shift that and take responsibility. You talked about that earlier on. It's like the personal responsibility of us going, I am going to take ownership of my health and maybe question the things that, like, how did I come to know something? Like, you have a lineage of doctors, and I'd be so curious, just like your great grandfather, what were they doing health wise? Because it sounds like age wise, some of them were practicing when disease just started being introduced into the American culture.
Yeah.
And it's like you have this lineage, but we have to take personal responsibility. And so that's educating ourselves, but then also moving toward connecting to our creator and finding peace in our hearts and story, and then educating ourselves because knowledge is power. And then making the steps to do that, still connected to the creator of life that heals.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. And that can be
Yeah.
knowledge in the physical, but even deeper, the knowledge of God, God's true
Yes.
character and nature, and who he made you to be. That change in our thinking so much, and we don't have time to get into this, so maybe we'll do a part two, but
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that.
our thoughts directly change the shape of your DNA, and
Yeah.
therefore your genetic expression changes the
Yeah.
shape of the water that your DNA floats in. Your thoughts directly impact. So these experiences we have in our life, and we interpret it a certain way, we draw a conclusion, and we think that conclusion is truth.
Mhm.
And that's where we got to be careful. God's word is a truth, but then we got to really let the Holy Spirit lead us in that word, because there's a lot of traditions of man and doctrines of man and religious things and all that. But
Yeah.
you cannot, I mean, it's so profound, and really that's a whole nother conversation. But I
It's
want
a
your
ripple
audience
effect.
to
Yeah.
know that our thoughts, if I had to put it all like percentage wise, I should probably not say this because then what's the point of watching the course? But it's probably 10% is in the 3 pillars: nutrition, hydration, movement. 90% is right here. Our
Yes.
thinking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our thinking impacts that carburetor so much, so much. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to do a part two because I always say our thoughts and our words create a pathway in how we believe and experience life. And it creates our reality. And we have to be willing to question our thoughts
Yeah.
and live in that place, not drive us, not from a survival part of questioning, but as a curiosity part again. Okay, one last question. And this is what I ask all of my guests, but the podcast is called Be Ablaze. And what is you? It sounds like we've heard what the fire is behind you, but if you could spend 72 hours talking about one thing or living out, what is your blaze? What is your fire?
What I like to do more than anything is connect the dots.
Yeah.
I love to get on that whiteboard or just verbally, but connecting dots in someone's story of where they've been, where they're at now, knowing a loving creator designed this person with the purpose to be in the earth right now. And steal, kill, destroy is happening because of a liar. If we can connect some dots where it seems so confusing, a dot to dot, it's just a bunch of dots on the paper. You have no idea what that thing is, but just start and connect a few dots, and an aha moment can happen. And that can lead to freedom,
Yes.
because Jesus's burden is light and not a heaviness. And there's so much heaviness, but it's the enemy doing it.
Yeah.
And Jesus bought and paid for us to walk in that freedom, walk in that lightness. But so connecting dots, that's what I love to
Love
do.
it.
And
That
it's
is your blaze.
unique for each case. It's everyone's so unique. That's the beauty
Yeah.
of it too.
Yeah.
And not that I'm like I don't have it all figured out, but there's such a crisis of health. And when you can connect that, but then you connect it to the terrain, which is the stewardship of that carburetor, which goes into the quantum realm, goes into our
Yeah.
thoughts. So it's all connected. Med school disconnects the human body into all these separate parts, doesn't even go into the quantum. And to be able to reconnect all that back together and show people how it is all connected. And when it's stewarded, it'll function. That's what I love to do, connect the
Yeah.
dots.
It's so fun. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ben. I so appreciate you joining us today, and I would love to do a part two because I have other questions and I would love to share a little bit once I have my story played out with my teeth stuff and the rheumatoid arthritis and all that kind of stuff. I'm excited about that you've helped me with. So I look forward to playing that story out and having the dots connected in that way. But I so appreciate you. So please go check out his website, and I will have all of that in the show notes. You're the Cure. It's a self-paced 9-module, multi-video, multi-PDFs course designed to teach the why and the how-to of the Veritas 4 pillars of health, which are nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace. And for each of our listeners, you have that blaze in you. You are not designed to silence it. You are not designed to taper it down for whatever has happened in your life, the reasons why you might have done that. It is time for you to start seeing the truth, learning the truth, and connecting to the truth, and living from that place of hope, healing, and power. And again, Dr. Ben, I just so appreciate you, and I look forward to having you on the podcast again. Is there anything else you'd like to wrap up with before we wrap up today?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share. Our ears that hear that name of the program, You're the Cure, isn't a gimmick. I truly believe it's not about me or coming to see Dr. Ben. You're the cure's in you, but people just need to know. So thank
Yes.
you for the opportunity to come share with your audience. And thank you for all that you do and your whole team and Bob, and just keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again. Everybody, y'all have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to Be a Blaze podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, don't keep the fire to yourself. Follow, like, download, and share it with a friend who needs the fire. Let's keep blazing trails together. This is Polly Hamp, and I will see you next time.